Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy.
And before we start, I have a message para todos los que hablan español. Ya sé que este canal dice que es en español, pero la verdad, los lives o los en vivo ayudan con el algoritmo y para tener más audiencia, entonces disculpen que vayan a hacer en inglés, pero solo somos dos personas y hace lo que se puede. Cuando pueda hacer uno en español lo hago, pero por ahora van a hacer en inglés porque aquí el señor no habla español todavía y no queremos hacerle como Selena Gómez. Entonces, si se quieren quedar, quédense y si no, mañana va a haber nuevo video. Entonces, gracias por andar por aquí. That's it.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yes.
Today we're talking Emilia Pérez, going to the U.S. Colombia deportations and negotiations. And then the U.S. deportations and sanctuary cities. And then COVID restrictions come to an end in the U.S. Finally, a lot of people didn't know that they still had them. And then the Russia-Ukraine negotiations and what's going on there. What's happening in Davos?
Hold on, I think we're not on. It says no data. It's... I don't know if it's working. Okay, we're on again, I think.
We're on again? Okay.
Supposedly.
Okay, well, let's start with Emilia Pérez. You know most about this because you're the one that made the video on it and it went a little viral.
Yes. Well, it didn't go viral, but it got a lot of views, so thank you to everybody who saw it. But yes, so Emilia Pérez in Mexico is not doing as great as a lot of people want it to be doing, especially the high Hollywood executives. The movie theater is basically empty. Nobody's going to watch it. And what they did was very sneaky. So what they did in Mexico was they decided to not just release it to Netflix like they did with every single other country almost. They released it in November. Here in Mexico, what they did was wait and release it in theaters because they thought that that would be a great idea to release a movie that's essentially insulting all of Mexico and taking a very serious topic and something that's affecting millions of families every day and make it a musical and make it funny and not do any research about the country. So, of course, it's not doing very well. And here we see it's in Spanish, but we see that almost every single movie theater and cinema is empty because nobody wants to go watch that, especially, or pay for it, especially.
Yeah, well, you were telling me something else about this, and it's certain theaters here get promotions through the distribution companies, where if you don't like the film, you're supposed to be able to get a refund for it?
Well, it was a kind of, I mean, we have this one movie theater chain that's called Cinépolis, where they put a little stamp on certain movies and saying it's like guaranteed that you like it. So it's a warranty that you're going to like the movie. And what happened was a lot of people started going, and I mean, if they didn't know what it was about, they quickly found out. And if they used to say that if you leave within 30 minutes, you're able to get a refund because you didn't like the movie that they were guaranteeing as being good. So what happened with Emilia Pérez is a lot of people started leaving the movie theater and asking for refunds. And the movie theater chain, Cinépolis, started saying, wait, hold on, no, we're not supposed to give out refunds. Like, we can't give this many refunds. The employees were faced with having to deal with this whole situation. And I'm guessing the higher-ups were telling them, no, we're not giving refunds for that because they already knew it was going to be a whole mess and a whole big thing. And now they're basically going against the Better Business Bureau. I don't know what it would be called in English. It's the Profeco. So they make sure that consumers get what they're promised as according to the law. And now Cinépolis, the movie theater chain, is fighting with essentially an arm of the Mexican government who are telling them if you're putting the word guaranteed, that is a legal term, and you have to return the money.
And I like that idea. I mean, I would like to see it expand to other countries. It's a great idea. If a movie company really believes in their product, they'll be able to guarantee it. And I mean, I think it would get a lot more audience goers going out if studios put their money where their mouth was. But also, what Selena Gomez was crying over.
Yes, so in Mexico, there's a big controversy with Selena Gomez involving her not being able to speak Spanish. But for years now, she's been hanging on the flag, the Mexican flag, just because her dad, who, by the way, abandoned them, is Mexican. But now because it's trendy to be Latina, to pretend, even if you look a little bit Latina, to be full-on Latina, she doesn't speak Spanish. And in Mexico, a lot of people are outraged that she took a role where she has to speak in a Mexican accent and she just can't. And now she released, given the whole Trump situation and that her movie has been nominated for 13 Oscars, even though she wasn't nominated. Her movie was nominated for 13 Oscars, and now, because it has a lot to do with controversies of immigration and bad people, organizations, etc., she decided to make a video crying, sobbing. Let me play a little bit of it for you.
And we're going to hope the video has audio here.
Yes.
So
sorry if it's a little bit too loud. But so she's crying, sobbing, saying that she's so sorry to her people. She's just another one of these.
All my people are getting attacked. The children.
Well, she had that kind of emotion. If she had that kind of emotion in Emilia Pérez and that kind of acting skill.
Yeah, if she had acted like this in Emilia Pérez, I mean, it would have done.
And we know she's acting.
A lot better.
She had to turn on her camera, get everything ready, and then start crying.
I'm so sorry for it. At least you could understand her, but if you care that much, do it in Spanish. Maybe most of them probably can understand you. But it's just the two-facedness of the whole Hollywood industry and why the whole, like, it also adds to the conversation of why Emilia Pérez was even nominated in the first place. It's because they want to pander to the two sectors that are most being affected by Donald Trump, which is illegal immigrants and trans people. So she came out to do this whole thing. She's getting completely embarrassed online. And again, if she cared so much about Mexico and its people, why didn't you learn Spanish? Why didn't you get a coach to tell you how certain words are said instead of embarrassing yourself during a movie in which now has been nominated for 13 Oscars?
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to move on to the next topic here, or you got anything more with Emilia Pérez?
Well, just the two-facedness of all of Hollywood annoys me. But no, that was about it.
Okay, maybe. I don't know if you had the clip of this or not, but we had this LGBTQ pastor speak to Donald Trump just after his inauguration, and she really
there's
went
a mass
hard.
Traditionally. There's a mass that happens after inauguration because, they have to seem like they're interested in God. So they go to mass, and then
they didn't vet the mass, the church, or the pastor because it was just an LGBTQ sermon. And a lot of people already know this, but a lot of the churches are being infiltrated by the LGBTQ and the liberalists, especially within Canada. You'll see entire churches just plastered in native paganism gods and things like this rather than traditional Christian gods. And it's crazy what you'll see in Canada. You have rainbow flags that are at the actual steps of the church. And my jaw dropped. This has been going on for over a decade in Canada, though. So
yeah, and I mean not just a decade, but as I spoke about in my video Conclave in Spanish, I mean, there's been a war even within the Catholic Church about bringing in the liberals versus staying conservative within the church. And
there's a split within the church right now, the traditional side and then the New Age liberalist side. And what you're seeing is feminist women are gearing towards the New Age side, and men and masculinity are going much more towards the Orthodox traditional side or the traditional Catholic side as well.
Mm-hmm. So what happened with the Reverend?
Well, what I did want to say this is the liberal side do have shifting moral values. So they're trying to change the basic values of the church so they're not firm. Where the traditional side is firm in its morals, which it's really important to have non-moving moral characteristics in a religion. That's what makes religion. So especially when you're going to start combining it with government. Yeah. Government and religion will be separate, but religion will have a huge influence over government. And we can't have a liberal government combining its morality into government and then shifting wherever it wants, because then we get woke culture. And that's why liberalism is dying.
And I mean, I always say it in my videos, but I'm not religious, but I can understand the importance of having that foundational moral set of values within a society. And that's what has brought up most societies that are nowadays forgetting about those same moral values they used to espouse and that used to make them great nations.
Yeah, a non-moving moral value system, I think, is very important. And I think a lot of people that are non-religious are starting to turn towards a religious moral foundation to really influence society.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did you want to play the video or no?
I don't have the
You don't
actual
have the video.
video. No.
Okay, if you do want to see it, it was a really good video. Too bad we didn't have it. But okay, let's move on to the RFK, JFK, MLK assassination files being declassified. And this is obviously in the US. This was signed by executive order by Donald Trump. Now we have three different assassinations that happened here: the JFK, the RFK, and the MLK. The JFK assassination files, I don't know if we're going to get a completely declassified file or a lot of it's going to be blacked out because it was a separate order to the RFK and MLK assassination files. I do expect full declassification on the Martin Luther King and the Robert F. Kennedy assassination files. I think those will be a lot more robust. The JFK assassination files, I'm not so sure. They put a 15-day limit on there where they have to come up with a plan on how they want to declassify these files and how they want to gather these files up. So currently, right now, Tulsi Gabbard hasn't been confirmed into her position within the intelligence, and neither has Kash Patel within the FBI. So you do have a woke liberal that is currently in that office. So she's the one made up to get the JFK assassination files together. I don't know what to expect. But as far as the MLK and the RFK assassination files, they should be fully disclosed, but it's still going to take quite a few months, anywhere from 3 to 9 months. But it's good that the United States is finally coming out with this stuff, coming clean on a lot of its past, because if these are the real files and they don't tamper with them, you're going to see major government implication in this. And I think it's important for the U.S. government to start coming clean on a lot of its past history, because people just do not trust the intelligence agencies.
And I mean, that's why there was such a big hubbub about Trump, maybe getting rid of the FBI, the CIA, etc. But once people start learning like all of the history of those agencies and what has been done and what has been called for so many years conspiracy theories and making RFK Jr. seem like a nutcase, when all of this comes out, I think it's going to give a lot of credibility to also a lot of people that are now within the administration that have been saying these things for such a long time.
Yeah, and I also think that this is a win-win for Trump, because he's going to come clean and come through on these huge promises he made during his campaign, which he's been doing every single day. But more than that, if the public gets very, very upset with the FBI and the CIA with what is actually in these files, this gives him justification and public backing to start disassembling these organizations, whether it's the FBI or the CIA. I know he's appointing people like Kash Patel, who, if he gets into the FBI, he wants major overhaul within that, because the weaponization of what happened over the last, I wouldn't even say 4 years, I'd say the last decade. Mm-hmm. So after that, we have the U.S. Bans central bank digital currencies.
Yes. So what are CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies?
So I think most people know what Bitcoin is. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin would be an independent digital currency. The central banks are trying to create central bank digital currencies. And these are not just digital currencies. These have major monitoring mechanisms and a lot of weird features to them, where they'll be able to dictate what you can and can't spend your money on. In the beginning, they might not have those features, but eventually these features are going to be built in, because governments have come out with the documents, and so have the banks, showing that these features will be built in, whether they choose to use them or not.
Well, they're convenient for the banks, well, for the banks too, but for the governments that want to implement them, because it allows them to know every single financial interaction that their citizens have, which, I mean, right now they could find out about, but it's a bit of a harder process because finance is still mostly personal. And what it would do is, for example, it would give them much higher control over what sorts of things their citizenry is able to buy or not buy. Or if their citizen is not behaving properly, then they can do something about it and cut off, for example, their bank for a little bit.
Yeah, and maybe we can go a little bit more into this. People are like, well, it will say that maybe they give you $1,000 and you can only spend it on food or certain food products, because they want you to not eat as much meat as you're eating. So it's controls the government will have. But the reason I think these controls would be accepted by the general public, this could be implemented with a UBI. So a central bank digital currency, there was rumors going around over the last few years that a UBI or a central bank digital currency would be implemented with a universal basic income for countries like Canada. There's already countries in Europe that have this. So
and a universal basic income is when the government is giving you like a base salary, even if you're not doing anything.
But they want to be able to dictate what you spend that money on.
And monitor it.
Yeah, and monitor
where it's going. But also it's a great tool for punishment.
Yeah.
So if they cut off all your resources, you have nowhere to go and no money to spend. So what Trump has done now is taken steps to, I'm guessing here, taken steps to not further the American financing system.
What he is, he's banning central bank digital currencies. He's really aligned himself with Jamie Dimon and other people within the financial industry within the United States that are really banking on the U.S. dollar. They want to try to rebuild the strength of the U.S. dollar. It's been deteriorating. And with the BRICS coming up with potentially a digital currency or currencies of their own, and more countries trading outside of the U.S. dollar, Trump is trying to signal to the world that he is doubling down on the U.S. dollar. So,
but my question would be, is he banning central bank digital currencies or CBDCs within the United States? Because, I mean, technically, he is the government. He is the one that allows to implement it, or that CBDCs from other countries be spent in the U.S.?
Well, right now, I believe he's banning central bank digital currencies from being created within the United States because he did this through an executive order. But he has also threatened the BRICS and any BRICS countries that deal in a digital currency that there would be heavy tariff fines. So I think he's trying to persuade other countries not to deal in digital currencies, at least not central bank digital currencies, because the central bank of whatever country that digital currency is from will end up with a little bit more power than the U.S.
Okay, got it. Sorry, I'm just telling people sorry for the start of the stream because
the start of our stream was a little choppy.
Iffy. But it was because it kept connecting and disconnecting.
Now let's go into this story, and this was a funny story because you were talking to some friends on the phone yesterday, and it was about the U.S. deporting illegal immigrants to Colombia that were criminals, and Colombia didn't want to take them.
Yeah.
Why don't you go off with this one?
Well, I mean, basically you came into the bathroom first. I was getting ready, and you were like, "Oh, I got to tell you that like Trump is right now like in the midst of a Twitter war." And I was like, "Twitter war?" With Colombia's Petro. And I was like, Colombia's Petro, what the hell do you mean? And apparently, so initially Trump and the Trump administration have started deportations of criminal illegal aliens that are within the country. And they were sending the military planes to Colombia.
Yeah, it's whatever country the illegal aliens are from. When they capture them, they then send them to a pipeline to go, whether that's by boat or plane, back to their country of origin. In this case, it was Colombian criminals. Mm-hmm. And the Colombian government did not like this.
Yeah, and so Petro, who is like, he'd love to think he's a dictator, but he's not. He tried to stand up to him and say, no, we're not letting you land into Colombia because we're not taking them back because they're meant to be there, whatever. And he did this whole diatribe on Twitter about the nation and the country. He sounded like Selena Gomez and Emilia Pérez by the end. Like there was no rhyme or reason to what he was really saying. It was like a long love letter to your scorned lover. And then Trump came out and said, no, you are going to take them because they're your citizens. And if you don't, and he listed a bunch of things he was going to do, impose 50% tariffs on Colombia, ban any experts from Colombia to the United States, not give visas or cancel the visas of any Colombian, I guess, ambassador, envoy to the United States and of Petro's family, and then like a bunch of things that Trump said he was going to do, again, in retaliation for them not letting him land the planes. And then eventually Petro, a few hours, I think, not even a few minutes later, came out and said, okay, I'll help you out, and you can actually borrow the presidential plane to bring more of them back into Colombia.
But if you don't know about the president of Colombia, he's a highly liberal, he's a real leftist, so he couldn't leave it on that because then he looks like he's capitulating to Trump. So he came out with a further statement on X, which I don't know why he would, because it's only going to worsen relations between the U.S. and Colombia. But he said, I don't want to deal with a white slaver. We will take our citizens back, but I don't want to deal with him any further or give him any time of day. So also you have to understand what Trump was, the big thing he was going to threaten Colombia with was a 25% tariff for the first week, I believe it was, and then it would go up to a 50% tariff. And at this time of year, the biggest export of Colombia is actually roses. And if you don't know what's happening in the U.S. right now, it's Valentine's Day. So all those roses, it's one of the biggest export seasons for Colombia to the U.S. So it would have severely hurt a lot of people within the country. So then the president couldn't have that. So that's why he, I think, really bent over backwards. And you're seeing real leadership and negotiation skills from Trump, which I think a lot of other countries are going to want strong leaders that really know how to negotiate and really use leverage and not just, ask for this, and when you say no, say okay. Say no, this is what we want. If you don't give it to us, this is the leverage we have.
And I think a lot of other presidents and people around the world need to start learning not how to do the exact same thing, but how in a lot of ways diplomacy and extra diplomacy sometimes hurts your own country. But at the same time, you can't get on the same, you have to also understand what level you are as a country. And I think Colombia was getting a little bit too big for its breeches.
Yeah, I also think this would be very good for countries like that aren't the U.S. maybe or aren't China. They, like I say, a country like Mexico. If you start negotiations like this, you really want to expand your dealings with countries that are smaller than you, that you do have leverage over. So it's really an incentive for Mexico to start trading and do other things with other countries that are maybe smaller than them, which would help their economy. And then they also deal with the U.S., who has leverage over them. So it's kind of like a food chain of each country can kind of feed each other. But well, we'll see what happens going forward. But I think a lot of people are wanting strong leaders. We see this trend happening in Eastern Europe, especially Germany, Hungary, Romania, things like that. You've seen what's happening in Russia, the Middle East, African countries. Liberalism is slowly dying. Not slowly dying, it's having quite the decay right now. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next story we're going to go into here is, we'll go to a related story. This is the U.S. deportations and how that's related to sanctuary cities.
Sure.
You got anything to say about that, or I'll start out?
Well, I mean, if we might need to explain what sanctuary cities are. So for quite a few years now, there's been the mostly liberal bases of the certain states that mostly vote Democrat have decided that if an illegal alien goes into that city or into that town or country or state or etc., they are not ICE or the Migra, the immigration officers are not allowed to take them from there because they've given them sanctuary or refuge.
Yeah, basically, to put this in a simple form, there's federal law and state law, and the state governors and mayors of places like LA, Chicago, and New York that are highly liberal cities are saying they're not going to comply with federal law or federal agents. So this is putting a huge rift between the two. But what we're seeing happening now, Trump went right in and he did what he said he was going to do, and this was get rid of criminals that were illegal aliens within the country. He has news crews with these ICE agents to show what's going on and how many people they're deporting, what their records are, so he can really, I think, sway public opinion. But what we seen was mayors of cities like Chicago, New York, LA, Boston, highly liberal cities, they're flipping. Especially, I think the mayor of Boston was on there and she goes, well, we're not a sanctuary state. where she had come out a year previous saying, we are a sanctuary state. We're not going to comply with federal laws. She was really quick to make it a sanctuary state when it was under Biden. Now that it's under Trump and it's a reality, she's not willing to put her political career on the line because she knows the majority of Americans, whether this be conservatives or liberals, want these criminal migrants gone. So now she is complying. She's allowing ICE agents in there. She's saying it's no longer a sanctuary state, and most of the sanctuary states are beginning to flip because of the public pressure. Also, the federal government could stop funding of the states in natural disaster cases, or just general funding that the federal government gives to the states if they go against or break federal law. So it's pretty interesting.
But I also think that within these states now, like lately, within the past year, there has been a lot of demonstrations and people kind of rising up and saying, hey, we also don't want our resources, especially the communities that are, most in need. We don't want people that aren't even supposed to be here taking our resources and taking our schools and using our schools as shelters, etc. It was detracting a lot from the community, but the leaders were not strong enough. Let's kind of
put this in more plain language. You're kind of going around the edges here. What I think you're saying is, and I agree with this, is Black and Latino communities are going to be the first to benefit if a lot of these migrants are kicked out of the country, especially the criminal migrants, because they're living within the minority communities within the Latino communities.
They were being placed within those communities on purpose
because they were felt safe in sanctuary cities. And these sanctuary cities put them in the most low-income places that they could.
But then they were also channeling resources that were supposed to go to the community to go to the migrants. So the whole narrative that it is only the evil white men that don't want these migrants in there, it affects a whole swath of communities.
Hold on.
But now I think what's happening is that the mayors are able to, speak more openly and kind of be in agreement with Trump because they've seen the public kind of begging for something to be done, and now they have the perfect excuse to actually go that way, when before they were kind of being held by the balls by the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this issue affects white people as much as it does the Black and Latino community within the United States. And people really don't understand this. And these communities have completely turned against immigration. They don't want it anymore. And I lived in the States for a long time. I also lived in Canada. And the sentiment has always been to allow the migrants in, not just legal migrants, but illegal migrants. And the Democratic Party and the liberals have really pushed this narrative. And it was really accepted by the general public. When Donald Trump came in there hard and heavy and following through with these promises, I didn't think it was going to be accepted by liberal states, and it is en masse. Not the entire state, but a lot more than I thought would happen. I'm looking at California, where I used to live, and you are seeing a lot of support for the deportation of migrants, because as soon as these migrants are deported from these Latino and Black communities, the wages within those communities go up almost instantaneously. It's an instantaneous change, not some long-term change. It doesn't take it's not going to take a long time to see a result within these communities.
But I also think that because of the rhetoric that is mostly shown, or has been mostly shown for a very long time, within the news, within also Mexican media, for example, or Latin American media, a lot of people believe that this is completely evil and they're being bad to the illegal migrants, when in reality, the people that went through the necessary process to be in the United States are the ones that are most affected by having people just walk through the door and have no control over the issue. Also, Mexico gets affected by that with caravans and people from not just Latin America. That's also one of the important things, is that it's not just Latin American people that are crossing through both Mexico and the United States and Canada. It is people from the Middle East, people from China, people from everywhere that are not vetted. They're not able to check who they are, what they want to do in the US, what they want to do in Mexico even. And I mean, it is an issue that affects a lot more people than what media wants you to think.
It's also quite the plan to go after criminal illegal aliens first and send news crews with these agents to show what's happening. You're really going to gain public support within this first year. I'm going to guess he's going to do this for a year, and then he's going to go after different groups of illegal migrants. But because public sentiment will have changed because they do not want illegal migrants that are criminals, he will have normalized the deportation of illegal immigrants within the United States. So it's a very savvy strategy. Also, this does affect Mexico a lot, but we have to really look what happened over the last decade or even 2 decades. What was happening were people were coming to Mexico from all around the world and using the Mexican border as an entry point into the United States. And Mexico facilitated this through NGOs and negotiations directly with the liberal government within the United States. So,
and I mean, also just allowing the NGOs that were coming from Europe, we're coming from the UN, we're coming from Soros, we're coming from all of these multiple entities. They would just allow them to be at border entry points and border points in the south and in the north and just guide migrants through and give them all the resources they needed, while it could also be, you know, dangerous for people within Mexico, for all of these people to be coming through.
Yeah, and I was talking to people here about this, and I really have to say that it's going to be interesting the next election that comes up here, because one of the big issues that's going to come up is immigration. And Mexico usually doesn't have an immigration problem because they just facilitate immigration to the United States. But with all these immigrants being dumped into Mexico now, there's going to be a huge population that's displaced here. It's going to cause a huge economic effect. So you're going to have immigration, the issue of the cartels come up, as well as economics. And these are 3 conservative issues. So it's going to be interesting if a conservative party comes up out of nowhere and uses populism and uses conservative issues in the next election. Typically, Mexican elections that I've been researching have kind of circled around liberal ideals, but I think it's a changing world, and the U.S. is going to dictate what issues will really affect the next election here in Mexico.
And it's going to be up to the parties and the people that they're putting forth to either address these issues or continue to ignore them and continue to be in the situation that we currently are in.
I will say this, Claudia Sheinbaum is quickly becoming more of a centrist and a whole lot less of a left-wing liberal because of Trump. She's no, I'm not saying she's a centrist yet. I'm not saying she's a conservative, but she's been
fighting with Trump for every single statement that comes out of her mouth is trying to go against Trump, and Petro now saw what happens when you do that. I don't think her strategy is a good idea.
She may be fine. She's trying to fight against Trump outwardly, but at the same time, she's not putting these crazy policies in anymore. She doesn't feel as confident because there's going to be pushback now.
Yet.
We'll see what happens.
That's the main issue. I don't think yet she will or has done that.
Okay, the next issue we had was COVID restrictions are done in the U.S. Trump again signed an executive order ending all COVID restrictions. And this is crazy because I didn't even know there was COVID restrictions going on until I seen this executive order. Then I did a little research. And the main area that people were being forced vaccinated or told they would have to leave the country was their immigration status. So if you needed a passport or you needed to change your immigration status in any way, shape, or form, you had to have an up-to-date vaccination card. And if you didn't, then you were denied a change of status.
And now he's removed that. They also removed the restriction, or they acknowledged what happened with, I believe it's police and fire, and a lot of these services. The people that were fired because they refused to get vaccinated now have been allowed back to have their jobs, but number 2, they're getting full back pay, I believe. So they're paying them for all the time that they were out or that they were fired.
Well, I don't know if this goes for police and fire, but I know he signed a specific executive order that pertained to the military. So if you were in the military, refused to get the vaccine, you got a dishonorable discharge, and you were exited from the military. Now what he's saying, you're allowed to have your job back.
And it was mainly military. Yes.
And any time you missed, you're going to get back paid for all that time, which is years and years. These are going to be huge lump sum payments. So anybody that was ejected for the COVID vaccine, they will most likely go back in the military just for that one lump sum payment. And this is a good thing because you're going to get you got a lot of good soldiers, and a lot of soldiers are conservative and were against the vaccine. So these were like 15-year veterans, 10-year veterans being exited from the military because Biden was trying to clear the military out of hard-nosed conservatives, and he was trying to make a liberal military. This is going to bring back a lot of experience of soldiers in the U.S. military, and it's a damn good policy.
And I mean, coming from Canada, which we moved here July last year, they still have these restrictions going. In British Columbia, where we were living, they still have COVID restrictions for a lot of nurses and doctors. And they have never acknowledged that they did anything wrong. In Alberta, the Premier, Daniel Smith, at least tried to acknowledge and do something for the nurses and doctors and all the service people that got fired because they wanted to do something different with their bodies and not listen to the government just telling you it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And now it's good to see that the states can finally return back to reason as well with this topic. And I think a lot more conversation is now being allowed to be out in the open about the truth of all of this.
Well, that being said, Fauci was given immunity, so that was a huge disappointment. But I will also say a lot of lawsuits now are going forward and huge settlements are coming through. Tyson Foods was firing lifelong employees. They came to a settlement. We don't know the details of that agreement because they agreed not to disclose it. But that settlement is going to end up being one of the bigger settlements. And that was done through Robert Barnes in 1776 Law Center. And Robert Barnes was actually describing a lot of these lawsuits that went through. There was only a few lawsuits and a few people that were actually willing to stand up and put it all on the line. They didn't want to negotiate. They wanted to go all the way to trial, all the way to negotiation. And when just these few people stood up and put these cases forward with lawyers that were mainly taking these cases on a pro bono basis, they set the precedent for other lawyers and other states to go after the individual companies or the COVID vaccine itself, because you are able to still prosecute Fauci on a state level, just not on a federal level. So states may come forward and prosecute him, as well as you're able to prosecute companies on a state level as well. So it's going to be interesting what's going to happen, and I see a lot of cases going forward in the U.S. especially. Canada, not so much.
Yeah, elsewhere around the world, I think it's going to be harder. Also because the U.S. is basically the lawsuit nation. So they have it a bit easier to do all of these lawsuits. But they are important, and they might help the world see the reality of what happened to us as a collective with all of this circus that we had to live through.
I will say this, but I don't have a lot of hope on it. Trump was very pro-vaccine when he was in there, but he left it up to people to make the choice for themselves. So he didn't mandate it. When Biden came in, that's when the mandates came in if you wanted to work. But what I will say is he's making a lot of moves when it comes to the CIA and the FBI. So if we get a new FBI director such as Kash Patel, and they want to disclose these JFK, MLK assassination files, they may be willing to disclose more files that pertain to these COVID vaccines, which would be huge for court cases all around the world to know what really happened behind the scenes with not just the U.S. government, but these vaccination companies or these pharmaceutical companies, because they're primarily based in the U.S. I'm sure there's a lot of documentation the government does have. I would love to see them release it.
And also to know what's really in them. What has been the actual injury rate? What are the actual injuries? How many real deaths have there been? What's up with all of what happened in the morgues and what's coming out of people's bodies and that's within their system? All of that is still unknown. Was it a lab leak? That's still kind of up in the air. They haven't had the balls to come out and say, yes, it was from this lab by these people for this reason.
In my opinion.
So I think all of these, a lot of people already know of this information. A lot of people that are interested are already completely knowledgeable on it, but it is the mainstream public, and I think the world's public, everybody to know, because here in Mexico, there's still a lot of people that defend the vaccine and that defend those decisions, that are outraged that the government didn't provide more vaccines for people, which I think was, yes, mismanagement and a bad way to deal with a situation, but also a blessing in disguise because not enough people got them and got injured by them.
I will say this, people want Fauci's head on a stick. He was the one that covered this whole thing up. What's also implicated are these 57 biolabs in Ukraine. All these weaponized engineering biolabs all around the world. He was directly involved with Wuhan. We've seen through the emails. We know he's involved and implicated. And as soon as Kash Patel and the rest of the Trump administration get into the FBI, they will have the documents and the evidence they need to prosecute him. The problem is they give him a pardon now. So the next option that Trump would really have to get the public on his side is just release these documents and prosecute Fauci in the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm. He might not go to jail for it, but the rest of his life would be a living hell if this information comes out anywhere he moves in the world, because this was a worldwide vaccination cover-up.
And I mean, it's not like there's
in my opinion.
Yes, in our opinion. It's not like there's no precedent also with this same man, with Fauci, and the whole HIV issue, the AIDS crisis. I mean, there's so much back information that could also start coming out, and for people to stop calling others crazy just because they actually did some research, and for the truth finally, I mean, it's cleansing. The truth cleanses.
Well,
for it to finally come out.
It's not totally insane to think that he would release these documents. Trump would release these documents to kind of prosecute Fauci in the court of public opinion, because he recently removed Fauci's security. He had $13 million.
Oh yeah, no, his actual security.
His actual security. So he had a huge security detail that followed him everywhere. It was tens of millions of dollars, and Trump completely removed that.
And it was given by the government, paid for.
By the government. And Trump was asked, "Are you going to feel guilty if something happens to Fauci?" And he said, "No. Fauci made a lot of money off of this, and he can pay for his own security," which kind of implied on its own that Fauci was making money off something he shouldn't have been making money off of.
Yes.
But let's go on to the next story.
Sure.
We have the Russia-Ukraine negotiations, and I'll try to make this one quick.
Because this is yours, and I don't really know about much.
Okay, what I do want to say is Russia is looking to make a deal not with Zelensky or Ukraine, but it has to be the U.S. And why does it have to be the U.S.? Because a lot of people are speculating that they're keeping Zelensky in power, even though he's not the legitimate president of the country anymore. What do I mean by that? I mean, there was scheduled to be an election quite a few months ago. Zelensky declared a state of emergency, so he wouldn't have to have an election. At the same time he said he didn't have to have an election, Russia conducted an election safely in the eastern region of Ukraine. So we know it's possible to have an election, but the polling is showing people have turned against Zelensky and this war in Ukraine itself. So he does not want to have an election. So he's just maintaining power through executive orders, basically. And now he's trying to put himself forward as the main negotiator that would ultimately sign documents of a peace agreement if he came with Russia. The problem with that, Russia can really see through this. What would happen if Zelensky signed any documents of peace? A year later, they can say, well, he wasn't really the acting president. He was an illegitimate president because there was no election. And then the Western countries, along with Ukraine, could renege on that deal. So I think Russia is looking for long-term peace negotiations and an architecture, a peace architecture within the region, but it has to be done with Donald Trump. The problem with that, Donald Trump doesn't look like he wants to look like he's capitulating. So it's going to look very interesting what happens. I think ultimately Trump may make a deal behind the scenes, but if nothing does happen, he's going to pull the funding out from Ukraine, which is basically pulling the rug out from under Ukraine, and the war is going to have to come to an end.
And I mean, most, if not all, of the people that were in support of keep funding this war in Ukraine are all basically gone. I mean, they're still, or at least have lost a lot of power within the U.S. So why would they want to continue with it if now most of the people don't want to fund it, and they don't have to?
Trump's following through on every promise he's made. And the Ukraine one is the only one he hasn't, but he's given his generals 100 days to try to come to negotiation. So I fully expect he's going to want to negotiate a deal on this. I will say, with Israel and Gaza, it was very interesting. Trump came out with a statement today, and he was saying Palestine is completely in rubble. There are no houses left. We're gonna have the Palestinian refugees be taken by either Jordan or Egypt. And the U.S. does give Egypt a lot of funding, so he's looking to use the Biden plan, which is get one of these other countries to take these refugees in. Problem is, these countries don't want to do it. Now, with Donald Trump, on the other hand, he's a hard-nosed negotiator, and he will pull funding from Egypt. And in order to keep that funding, they may very well take a portion, if not all, of these refugees. So I'm going to be very interested to see what happens here, because basically there's a chance Israel takes over all of Palestine if that does happen. Okay, let's go to the next thing, which is Davos.
Yes.
A couple things happened at Davos.
Yes, I'm looking for...
And I will say this, a lot of the
distracted.
news revolved around today, and even the last I'd say the last week, around Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Every news story is Donald Trump, because he's
That we do, yeah.
making major moves on a global basis, on a national basis that affects every country in the world. So I apologize if almost every story is involving Donald Trump, but the moves he's making politically and geopolitically are going to have major impact on almost every country in the world.
Yeah. So Davos was happening this past week. If you don't know, that is the World Economic Forum's I'm on screen. The World Economic Forum's annual meeting of evil. And Klaus Schwab's opportunity to spew his usual stupidity on the world. But Rebel News, which is Canadian independent news company, who we know some of the people there. We really respect all the work they do. Love how they report. They went with Billboard Chris. Now Billboard Chris,
and they go every year.
They go every year, yeah, and they go pester, essentially go pester every single politician and finance person and business owner that goes, like, the really rich.
And I will say this before
people.
you continue.
Sure.
When they do go to Davos, there's the public area. And then there's all these different private areas that politicians are coming out of and going into. Yeah. Rebel News is not allowed access to any of these private areas because they are independent and honest news organization. Yeah. So they kind of wait in the general area and they follow these politicians and ask them a bunch of questions. It's very interesting to watch their reporting because they have two reporters just on both sides going after these guys. Asking
the real questions that are actually relevant and not just pandering to these people in power, as has been done for centuries. But why don't we go into what happened with Billboard Chris there? Yes, so if you don't know who Billboard Chris is, I have a slight personal connection with him. Not trying to exploit it right now, but it's true. He's an activist from Vancouver. His activism mostly revolves around not transitioning children, so not mutilating the bodies of children on the altar of gender ideology. He wears a sandwich board, or like a billboard, that says children cannot consent to puberty blockers because children don't really know what it means. And I'll just say, when you say activist, it kind of makes him sound crazy activist. He's a father. He's a middle-aged man, well-spoken, father of two, very dignified, and he goes to have conversations. Yes. And when he has these conversations, he's very respectable. He uses statistics about gender transition. And people tend to get triggered and very often get violent with him. But continue. So yes, his main focus is just children. So he says if you're an adult and want to chop or put anything on your body, that's your prerogative. But children don't really understand the consequences of these decisions to mutilate essentially their own bodies, and they're being played by the media, the pharmaceutical industry, their doctors, gender ideologues, etc. Brief overview, I helped him make his website, and we filmed quite a few things with him in Vancouver. There's some really old material from when we did I believe it was an expose on a school in Toronto on his channel and on mine. Go follow him if you're interested. But he went to Davos to have conversations and ask the people there who have a lot of the power, a lot of them pharmaceutical company owners, and also just essentially very... Okay, so what happened? So he was talking with one of them, and he got basically punched in the face because it happens so often. But the fact that it happened at Davos, we'll have these quote-unquote dignified people. Well, he got the microphone got kind of... They pushed him. Yes. Don't over-exaggerate it. But yeah, they pushed him. In Vancouver, he got punched in the face. Yeah. Yes, there we go.
Okay, in Davos, basically what happened is somebody came out of one of these restricted areas where it's politicians and very influential people. They went up to Billboard Chris. They asked him if he spoke English. He said yes. They told him he's pure evil. And I believe they pushed him at that point, and they had some more choice words. Rebel News immediately went up to this gentleman
news journalists
and asked them who he was, why he was coming from the restricted areas, and just began to pester him with questions. Why is he assaulting Billboard Chris? Things like this.
But the main thing that I wanted to focus on was that the attendees at Davos were so impacted by him just standing on the street, speaking to other people about, a very important cause, and telling the truth, that they had a panel or committee about LGBTQ rights. They started off with saying, oh, there is a person outside espousing dangerous hatred, bigotry about the community, and this is what we need to stand up against, talking about this one guy, Billboard Chris, just speaking the truth and giving statistics and giving facts about what really happens to children when they're enveloped by gender ideology.
When you have to realize a lot of these, the politicians and executives and companies and NGOs that are at Davos, these are the people that are really masterminding the investment strategy to spread this gender ideology and the LGBTQ ideology around the world.
Yes, they're the puppet masters. They're the ones that hold the money, hold the influence, and hold all of these crazy ideas that then they want to, put on the rest of the world.
So yeah, I thought it was a very effective place for Billboard Chris to go, and It was good to see him there, and I'm glad he didn't get seriously hurt.
No, and it's good he got a shout out from the people themselves.
We also had Donald Trump at Davos. Now, he wasn't physically at Davos. He did I guess you would call it a Zoom call or a video conference call. And it was very ominous when they did the call, because they had him on stage on this huge screen. So he was just towering over everybody, and everybody was looking at him like he was like a dictator or something. And everything he said went against what Davos is about. He explained how he's going out of the Paris Climate Accords. He doesn't believe in the Green New Deal. He's ending the mandate for electric cars. People can choose their own vehicles. He's going to go heavy into oil. He's going to reduce the oil prices because he's going to drill, baby, drill. And he just went on and on and on and just basically crushed these people. And a lot of the attendees at Davos actually said that this year's conference was not like any other conference. This was the year they're really crumbling and starting to shut down.
But I mean, we briefly spoke about Millet's speech at Davos as well, where he essentially torched every single one of them.
Well, did he do it? I know he was having a speech this year again. I didn't have a chance to watch it. Last year's speech, I believe I posted it on our other channel, but...
Well, he mainly focused on ideology and the way that they're trying to inject ideologies into the world, and how they need to be defeated, and how they're not being as effective anymore.
Yeah. So overall, Davos is really starting to crumble, especially under the leadership of Donald Trump, and other presidents. Well, yeah, a lot of other countries are adopting a similar conservative ideology, where they're no longer going to take this ideological crap, liberal crap anymore. Yes. But let's go into the final story here, and it's about the new Chinese AI. It's called DeepSeek. DeepSeek? Is that the name?
Like seeking deeply, yeah. Like DeepSeek, it's here.
It's called DeepSeek AI.
Sounds Indian, but no.
It's the number one app on the App Store right now, and this was actually stunning to me, because the U.S. over the last, I'd say, 5 years has been putting out major propaganda against the Chinese government on how they're so far behind on robotics, how they're so far behind on AI. They're saying they're a decade behind on AI. They're saying they're a decade behind on robotics, and people are seeing things come out of China, and it never really matched, but there was never real proof that they were having real advanced AI. And with DeepSeek, a lot of the AI professionals and people that know the most about the industry are saying it's not only at parity with the US's AI like ChatGPT, it's actually far more advanced. And so this is very concerning because if they win the AI war, which is the major technological war that's going on right now, it's going to have major implications. A matter of fact, on the news that this DeepSeek AI came out and it was the #1 in the App Store, the NASDAQ dropped 650 points that day alone.
And I mean, I would say I would float around a theory that, as they do with a lot of other things they come up with, it's not really theirs. It's not really their information, their research there. They're just copying and improving upon that. But it'll, as many other things that are made in China, maybe break down or get out of control.
I think it's completely their technology. And if you look into the backing of how much money they are putting into the technology of chip management and into AI, it's 10 and 20 times the amount of what the US or any other country in the world is willing to invest. They're investing the money to get the talent from around the world to make this technology. So I believe right now, if with Donald Trump in office and Elon Musk backing him, I believe he's trying to get all the tech oligarchs within a line, and he's going to tell them he's going to deregulate them, and they need to go to work to make America the greatest technological country in the world again, because he has a real battle on his hands. He cannot fund the tech industry like China's funding their tech industry. What he basically has to do is say, I'm going to deregulate you and you make as much money as you want, but you make sure this is American technology.
I mean, you know my opinions on China and on TikTok and on all of this technology that is so wonderful. And they come out and everybody's always scared, or at first downplaying it, then scared of it. But then at the end, we have to remember things that are made in China seem great when you first get them and work wonderfully until they break down 3 months later. But with AI, the danger of the thing breaking down is that it could stop obeying, or it could start doing weird codes, or start searching other weird parts of the internet, or searching into people, which they're already doing. They already have a huge databases of information from other countries.
You're not understanding the implications.
I know, war, blah, blah, blah.
The implication is that they could get this AI, if it's far more intelligent than any American AI system, to basically ask it to go against the energy grid or the military grid or the water grid and just stay asleep in there and then take over the systems when they want. So it's going to be the next battlefield in tech, I believe. But I will say this. I was watching people use this DeepSeek AI, and this is also a problem. And this became a problem with them when there was the American AI battles originally, because originally there were no Chinese companies involved in AI. The major company was, I forgot the name of it, but Elon Musk was OpenAI. Mm-hmm. Elon Musk was one of the founders with another gentleman, and the other gentleman stole it from Musk. And
that's what Musk says.
Well, yeah, that's what Musk says, and I believe him. But now he has his own, but he's trying to play catch up. But what I was going to say is all these AI companies in the United States, when they first came out, they had hard liberal leanings, and we've seen what that meant. So if you asked for a picture of the Pope, it would give you a black Pope.
Yeah, they were very biased.
They were very biased. And
because of the people coding it.
Yeah, if you asked how many genders there were, it would give you liberal answers.
Yes.
If you asked anything, it would give you a liberal leaning, and that still exists to this day.
Yeah.
Even when I use Grok, which is Elon Musk's, which they say is a lot more conservative, which I will admit it is, I would say it still has a lot of liberal leanings built into there.
Well, because a lot of the coders and people that are in tech, Silicon world, will still be that way. And it might even be coded into parts that people don't really go into, or people don't really see, or it's just like ingrained within it.
But what I was going to say was this DeepSeek AI doesn't have that liberal bias.
Yeah, but what's ingrained within it?
I'm not done. But next thing I was going to say is it has an open Chinese bias. Mm-hmm. But it is nice to see that it is an open Chinese bias. So what do I mean by that? Somebody was asking a question about Taiwan and would China take over Taiwan, and DeepSeek AI basically said something like, we believe Taiwan has always been a part of China and will eventually reunite. Then they ask it, what do you mean by we? when it
We, the Communist Party.
and it openly responded, "We, the Chinese people, and the Communist Party,"
I was just making that up.
which I actually don't mind. So I don't want a bias built into any AI, but if they're going to build it into the AI, the liberal bias was very sneaky about it. At least the Chinese bias is telling you, "We, the Communist Party." So I don't know if I'm not going to use it. I tend to use Grok. I like to support Elon Musk, but I will say, at least it's open and honest. And I hope other AI manufacturers in the future have their AIs be a lot more honest than they are right now.
Yeah, I don't like to support Elon Musk, but I prefer him over the Chinese overlords, which everything they touch breaks eventually. So we'll see how this thing goes haywire. And
I prefer Musk over the other
infiltrating. Well, yes, that too.
Yeah.
But might end up infiltrating, data sets of the entire world, of the states, turning off our lights. I mean, China already owns all of the electrical infrastructure in the UK. So what could they do with this thing? They could implant it in there and decide to turn off the lights whenever they want, even without it being their own volition, because now they've created a mini communist monster. So
I think that was all the stories I had on here for today. But did you have anything else you were seeing in the news or you wanted to discuss?
No. I've been focusing on Emilia Pérez because I really want to get that video out for tomorrow in Spanish. There's a lot of updates about it now with Selena Gomez crying and the theaters being empty and the response of the Mexican people. I think the video we did, because you do all the camera work and research. The video we did, when was it? It's almost a month ago that we released it. Now it's all kind of coming into the surface. So that's been on my mind mostly. And then also the sports and the wokeness in sports.
Oh, yeah, we did wokeness in sports. And we posted it on a Friday, so it didn't have a lot of time to get traction. If you haven't seen that video, please go watch it. In Spanish. It was very good. It was a very good video. It's part 1. We are going to have 1 or 2 more parts of that.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Let me go to main. There we go.
And I guess that's it for today. So
yes. Again, I'll reiterate it. The live streams for now will be in English. I only have 2 hands. He only has 2 hands. So to do individual live streams on different channels, it also helps with the algorithm and it helps us, reach more people. So sorry if it's disappointing. It's in Spanish, in English. Perdón si no les gusta que sean en inglés, pero realmente sí. Es un poco para que ayude al algoritmo y un poco también para que Guy tenga una voz, porque si hablar en español sería como tener aquí a Selena Gomez al lado y la verdad no quiero eso. Entonces, so yes, thank you for watching us. I'm just telling them that you don't speak Spanish. That's why they're in English, but thank you for watching.
Adios.
Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I always miss